God puts us in nations, in places, not by mistake, but to do a job. What if we opened our eyes to the needs of our colleagues, of our leaders, of our subordinates, and we were a priest on their behalf? Welcome to the Repurposing Business Podcast. My name is Brett Johnson.
And I'm Len Johnson.
And we're going to be talking about how to get our business into God's business. Our subtext is Let My Business Go, and we'll have guests from around the world. So thank you for joining us this week and every week on the Repurposing Business Podcast. Well, welcome to the Repurposing Business Podcast. My name is Brett Johnson, and today I have three fabulous guests. I have Gabby Fortunato. Gabby is in Cape Town at present. And then I have Danica out on the left coast of North America in British Columbia. I presume that's where you are, Danica. Is that right?
Yeah, that is where I am.
Fantastic. Danica is originally from South Africa. I met Danica in, I would say, 2006, so 14 years ago, Danica, when you were decidedly preteen back in the day.
Yeah, decidedly, in fact.
Yeah, that's right. And Kirsty is in Cape Town as well. And Kirsty is a sales exec selling stuff in the realm of travel. And so her industry's been locked down a little bit, but unlocking bit by bit. And she sells fabulous vacations in Mauritius. If you haven't been there, you need to go when COVID is over. It's a wonderful spot to be. Thanks for joining us, Kirsty. And Gabby works in a fire protection, fire safety business because she's hot. I'm just kidding. Yeah. So here we are, and we're to talk about this question of, do you want your post-COVID self to look like your pre-COVID self? And I think everybody's had an opportunity to think about, do I want to do life differently? Do I want to do it the same? And this is a big question. And I think many new generation, I don't know if we want to call them millennials anymore, but new gen people, which these guys are, they think about these things. They think about big questions about purpose and about I just asked them, what's a millennial's favorite wine? And the answer is, if only somebody would pay me to do what I'm passionate about. How many times have you had that conversation? So we're going to chat about passion, about purpose, about is there an opportunity now to, and plus the real life. I mean, Danica, you're somebody, I think I'm going to start with you. You're somebody who's explored your dream, and you have the challenge of being a multi-talented person, right? Which means many options. So tell us some of the different things you've done on your journey so far. Take us back a little bit.
Oh dear. So I graduated high school. And my dad always challenged me to work as hard as I can, get the best grades that I possibly can so I can get in anywhere. So I did that. And he said, what's the hardest thing you can think of doing? Because since I was 9, I think I was like, what is my purpose in life? And my poor father had the challenge of raising that. And I think he did a pretty okay job. But he asked me, what is your purpose? What do you want to do? What everything? And he just said, well, what's the hardest thing you can think of doing? And I said, well, neuroscience sounds pretty difficult. So he's like, okay, well, get the grades to get into neuroscience, and then you can always go down from there. So that's what I did. And then when I graduated high school and I got into the neuroscience program at the University of British Columbia, I realized that that was absolutely not what I wanted to do with my life. So then I took a gap year. I was an intern at a church for a while and did a lot of music. And I realized that I did not want to be a worship pastor either. And then I went to university. I studied psychology for a year, and that didn't work out. I studied music for a year. And then the last time I went to Budapest and I studied medicine. So I've done a lot of studying. I have a lot of experience to show for it. But I think I could be described as a very passionate individual. I really enjoy doing everything. So that has definitely come with its challenges. And I have multiple interests in life, which is it's difficult sometimes, but it's also really exciting. I'm never bored, so that's good.
So how long were you in Budapest for?
I was there for a year, and then I did a little bit of a job shadowing with some of the doctors there, and I realized that their job is really not what you think their job is. And yeah, I was very discontented and kind of disillusioned about the industry. The medical field got me, my creative side just screamed at me to get out of there as fast as possible.
Yeah. So what are you doing now, Danica? You're back in British Columbia. Yeah.
Yeah. Back in Canada, I'm working as an executive assistant, just working as admin and stuff, which is really funny. No one would ever put me in admin if, you'd put all of my skills together. You wouldn't get to admin, but here we are. And I'm just working full time right now, just it's a first aid company. So we do a lot of supplies for like masks and gloves and sanitize and all that stuff. So we've been very, very busy. This is my first time off since December, so I'm really happy.
Yeah. So in some ways, some people might say, or you might say, hey, well, now I have a quote unquote real job. And what lessons have you learned from having a real job so far, would you say?
So many things. When you're in school, kind of, you always take homework, you always have things to do, right? And I've always been studying, and this is kind of the first year I haven't. So there's that. Now I have the afternoons are free, and then the weekends are free. So initially I was like, wow, so much free time. And after a year almost of working full time now, it's like, wow, you really do start living for the weekend if you're just switching off your brain during the day. Well, not using your brain, but not the fun part. And you're just kind of, it becomes so monotonous. And especially in a job like the admin job that I'm doing, it's a lot of repetitive work. It's a lot, and there's really a lack of purpose to such an extent that I've started so many projects on the side just because I'm not going anywhere. And it's so frustrating to feel that. So I'm currently quite frustrated in my job, and I've only worked there for a year. So every now and then I think, I'm like, how do you do this for another 40, 50 years? I mean, the average retirement age is like 72 now. So that's fun.
50 years to go. There you go. And Gabby, do you relate to that story at all? Do you in terms of meaning at work and so forth? And what's your journey?
Yeah, so I totally relate to a lot of what Danica was saying, especially the part of like living for the weekends. And I remember when I started at my company, I was like, what am I doing here? I'm not passionate about this. But everything that you were saying, I was like, Danica, are you telling me my story? Like, what is this? So I totally relate. And then I sat with my mom and I was like, ma'am, please help me. And I also went before the Lord and I was like, what are we going to do here? Because I can't live like this. I can't live another day where I'm living for the weekend. And then she started to ask me questions on like, okay, so why has God placed you there? Is there a task for you to do here? And she challenged me to shift my vision and my focus and look at impact for my company in this season. And although like I don't see this as a place that I will be for 40 or 50 years, but my mind shifted to, okay, how can I genuinely serve here with love? And Brett, you speak on this, is you don't have impact if you don't love. So how do I live by that principle and loving and serving? And after making that decision, like things started to change and get better. But yeah, Danica, when you spoke about like, being creative and nobody would have said you would have been here, I was like, I wouldn't have said I would have been here either. Right. wow. And for so long as well. When I started here, I thought it would be for like six months to a year. And like 5 years later, like still here, still passionate about it. Yeah, but I wouldn't say like, oh, this is where I want to stay forever. So
Yeah.
It's interesting. Years ago, a guy who worked with me said, when he first started working, he was working in investment banking. Somebody told him, make yourself indispensable to somebody, which is another way of saying find somebody to serve, which actually in the biblical narrative, if you like, finding somebody to serve, it's not a glorious thing, but making somebody else effective at what they do is an amazing thing, and so to come to a place of settledness where you can say, it's fine, I'm serving, I'm loving people where they are. But Gabby, you've also done some creative things, which I want to get back to in a moment. But first, we want to give Miss Kirsty a chance to chat. So Kirsty, in your case, I think you do love what you do a bit, don't you?
Yeah, so I think my story is very similar to theirs, but then there has been a bit of a turning point. So also just finished school, then lived abroad, came back, was like, what am I doing? And my friend invited me into where she was working as a travel agent. So just started being a travel agent because why not? Was there for about a year and then became a sales executive for another company before where I am now. And I must be honest, like there were so many things in there that made me come alive, but very similar to the two ladies where I was like, okay, but why am I here? What is my purpose here? Because honestly, at that point, my perspective was, if I'm not standing on a podium and preaching to the world, like, am I going to even make an impact? Like, am I even showing, because that's what's my perspective. Like, am I even showing the heart of the Father? Like, what am I doing here? And then two things changed. One, I took the Repurposing Business course with Brett, and literally the first class was like, so your business is your ministry. I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then Brett, I love how you broke it down for me, because you were like, Kirst, let's just count how many people you interact with in your business. You have a database of over hundreds of people. My database is huge. You couldn't fit that in a church building. Like, you're reaching more people than you would have reached if you were standing on your podium. And I was like, okay, this is actually my platform. So how am I using it? And it changed my perspective of waiting for the right job, instead of now going, I'm the right person for the job. What am I bringing? And then combining like what Gabs just said with, okay, so what is the purpose for the current position? So that really switched my perspective and made it a happier place, even though it was really, really hard, because it challenged a lot of my values. But then it switched into the business that I'm in now, which, Brett, you're right, I absolutely love. Of course, like, my personality is always going to want more and always going to want to reach higher, but I still love the process. Getting to travel, getting to meet people, getting welcomed into their home, meeting families, seeing businesses grow. So it really is, there's beauty in it, which I love. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm sure it came to Gabby and Kirsty's mind when Danica was talking. You're doing boring admin stuff, but right now, aren't you saving lives, Danica?
Yes.
I mean, technically. Supplying sanitizer to the entire Canada. Yes, we're doing well.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, because sometimes you need to look through the motions of your job, past the motions of your job, to the impact that you're having, right? Because, back in scripture, what they did is, and we're back to the and I kept being you for a moment, but so they took handkerchiefs from the apostles and they took them and people got healed. And we've challenged our clients. I remember there was a client in Bandung, Indonesia, that was making hand towels and bath towels and so on. And I talked to them about the handkerchief story and said, look, and they began to pray over their products before they went out. So Danica, you have an opportunity to be praying over all of that PPE equipment, the masks, the
truth,
the gowns, and all that kind of stuff, because of the collaboration with God in bringing healing. In other words, the menial task, place an order, get the money through, get the stuff. That stuff can be a bit boring and repetitive, and Jesus did some of that stuff as well. A lot of walking around, dusty feet, cooking fish on the beach and doing practical kind of stuff. But seeing beyond that to the purpose is kind of an interesting thing. And so sometimes if you can't get satisfaction in the mechanics of something, then, one looking beyond to the purpose. So very interesting. All of you talking about purpose, talking about passion. Now, Gabby, back to you. In your own particular situation, in some respects, a pretty boring business, as Danica would say hers is, freely confessing. And we suspect her colleagues won't be watching this. So she'll be blocking them all from her Facebook accounts, her Instagram accounts. Yeah. So, but Gabby, you found some ways to kind of change the atmosphere with just practical small things where there was a gap that you could take. Now, you weren't the CEO. You were assistant to the MD or the CEO. In some respect, a kind of a lower level position in the company, but you found some gaps once or twice. What were those, and what did you do?
Yeah, so one of the giants that I saw in my business was the lack of affirmation. And our industry is super competitive and kind of like dog eat dog. I do not like that. I'm like, no. So I really saw that. And I also saw that people's hearts were often just discouraged and despondent. And I was like, okay, what can we do here? And it was when I was doing the REAP course with you, and you shared the story of Feathers Lodge, where they wrote down the miracles, and they put a stone in a jar that represented a miracle. And so I was like, wow, that's amazing. I love that. So one of the things is in office, I started a joy jar where people could share things that they were thankful for, where others could like dip in the jar and read it and be encouraged for the day. So that tackled two things: for people to think of things to be thankful for, and for people to read and be encouraged. So that was one of the small ones. And then the second, this was probably the biggest one, was I organize our year-end functions. That's part of my job description. So one day, the Lord just put it on my heart, and he was like, Gabby, I want you to write affirmation for the 9 women in your company. And I was like, cool, okay. So I started writing the affirmations, and I was so excited. And then the Lord was like, well, why didn't you do it for everyone? And I was like, come again? That's a lot. So at that time, we were about 40 people. And so I'm like, oh my word, Lord. So it's not only a word of encouragement, but also a prophetic word. So I was like, okay. So I sat there doing it. And then there were some people that I was completely stuck on. And I was like, I don't know what to say here. So, and I felt that was strategic from the Lord. So the one day I went into my boss's office, and I was like, cool, I've done this, what do we think? And he was like, okay, I love it. And the moment he started to read it, the atmosphere in the room changed, and the Spirit of God fell into the office. And for a man who's not naturally affirming or encouraging, he suddenly started to write out things for the people that I didn't have words for. And I was like, wow. So we finished it, the year-end function came, and I asked him, okay, do you want to say this with me, or should I go? And he was like, no, Gabby, you do it. And I was like, don't worry, I got you. I will go and do it. So I went around, and it was very noisy there. So it was perfect, because then their focus, it was just us and nobody else was listening. So I gave each person their words of affirmation and their prophetic word. And because we're predominantly men in this industry, some of the men got super teary, and from that day, I would say the company culture started to shift, and that was super powerful. Yeah.
Fantastic. Kind of interesting. You talked about God challenging you to give a prophetic word. Did you do that in religious language or in cleaned up language? How did you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I kind of did it in like cleaned up language, relevant to them. Yeah.
Fantastic. Great. So shifting the atmosphere. That's wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about the future. During this whole COVID pandemic season, have you guys been thinking about the future, and how have you been thinking about the future? What have you been thinking about? What sort of questions have been going through your mind? What if this, I wish this, if only that, I wonder if I could do something differently or whatever, or, how have you guys been thinking about the future? Kirsty, you're up first.
Knew it. Okay, I think for me personally, it's very unknown at the moment with our travel industry. So you've been forced to think about the future and forced to kind of be like, what's happening and what if this never goes back to normal? What does normal even mean? But I think one of the big questions for me is, how do I actually not go back to such a life that is so busy that it doesn't fit the other things that I value and that I'm passionate about, like family, like investing in different skills, like certain friendships, whatever you call it. So I think that for me, that's the biggest question, is how, when things do go back to a sort of normal, how do I actually work and manage my time a bit better to make it more fulfilling?
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. Danica, what have you been thinking about?
I've been doing a lot of just thinking about productivity, perspective, and like the same as Kirsty, because there's so many things we don't pay attention to just because we're so busy all the time. And family is so important, and I've just really been investing in my relationships with the people around me and really just building each other up. Like my family actually started a book club. We have Zoom book clubs every week. It's so cute. And we're encouraging each other. Like we call it our mastermind group, we all like sit together and encourage and help each other grow. And it's just been so good. So I haven't been doing too much future thinking. I think I switched a little bit of my future thinking off just because of the big question mark that it is in the world. But I've also been so encouraged by the fact that so many people have been so innovative, and you've seen so many creative people get so creative on how to build a new world, and we're all trying to do this together. The amount of working together I've seen has been incredible, and across industries. And like for my industry, we also run first aid trainings, so usually it's really competitive between the companies because there are only like 3 Red Cross training centers in what we call the Lower Mainland, which is where I live. And it was so beautiful. Like at the beginning of COVID, we had a conference call and everyone was like, okay, guys, how are we going to tackle this as a united front? Like, how are we going to make sure that everyone still gets their training, everyone stays safe? What are you guys' policies? Like we shared policies, we shared everything like that. So it was really cool to kind of see people just set aside the competition and just be like, listen, we actually need to work together. So that's been kind of really brewing in my mind, so you can say. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not really shooting for future thinking right now. I'm just staying in the present, seeing how I can grow now and how I can handle crisis better next time, so that I don't freak out and get all confused in what's going on. But it's more like, okay, why are we alive right now? I can do something right now with this. I can be level-headed when everyone else is panicking and stuff like that. So I think reading a lot of books, it's been good.
One of the things I've wondered about, Danica, building on that is, I'm often challenging people to think about purpose, think about the future. But I was chatting with one of your millennial colleagues and just saying to him, forget about that for the moment. Think about a next step. Think about something you can do this coming week to just build yourself up to place mentally, emotionally, spiritually and so on. So in some ways, just giving yourself to not try to resolve the future because of the unknowns, but to keep taking baby steps forward. Because it sounds like a bit of a paradox. On the one hand, we're talking about purpose, but on the other hand, there's the things that keep you plodding, keep you moving forward. Because I think one of the things that I've seen is there's a huge danger of just getting paralyzed. I don't know what's going to happen. So I feel on pause in so many areas of my life, and then that spirals backwards rather than keeps you plodding forward. So I love the family book club idea. Not quite as intellectual, but Davey and his friends get a different Disney script every week, and then they perform it on a Sunday evening. He normally has the lead female role. They swap the roles. They dress up. They do everything, and that's what they do. Yes, it's fun to do stuff that's going to keep you going. So that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Love that. How about you, Gibbs?
Yeah. Firstly, I love that tip that you gave on what can we do this week, because I think we're all kind of feeling that way, just overwhelmed. Like, how can I plan for the future when I don't know what the day or the week holds? So I think that was so practical. So thank you for sharing that, because I'm applying that. I'm going to apply that to my life. But yeah, with regards to the future, I think it's adding on to what Kirsty was saying is, okay, sitting down and being like, okay, these are my values. This is what I feel the Lord has been speaking to me about. So how do I start intentionally living? And then with what you've said, okay, how do I take action steps to that? So also, you're talking to what sounds like a bunch of networkers and organizers. So we're not luminary here thinking like way ahead. So it's definitely like a month in front of us. So I think that's it, like cutting it down to, okay, these are my values. These are the things that I want to move towards. And then what are my action steps? So that's my thoughts. And that's where I'm at the moment.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to put a question out. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, Dion Foster. Dion is a professor at University of Stellenbosch, a professor of ethics and so on. And we were talking about current situation and how we respond to the challenges in the world. He made an interesting point that there's a difference between hope and optimism. And as we talked about it, we were discussing how there's a lot of people that kind of went into the COVID crisis, and there was, I would say, almost a pseudo-optimism. I can get through this, I can cope, and so on. But when this thing runs into month number 3, number 4, number 5, are you guys seeing people running out of hope? Are you seeing sort of the human-based optimism kind of waning away? And what opportunities do you see for people such as yourself who are truly grounded in real hope, the God of all hope? What opportunities do you see? So 3 questions. Are you seeing the optimism, the air coming out of that balloon, if you like? And what's the response of people? What's the need opportunity? And then how are you guys speaking into that? Go, Kirsty.
Yay. Okay. I just feel like that one is so relevant, especially for the travel industry. Because in month 1 and 2, everyone was like, okay, crisis control, let's get people back to their countries and, sorting things out. And as we've gotten into, how many months has it been now? 5, 6? Don't even know. But like people have run out of hope. So the answer to your first question is yes. And they've run out of optimism. Not everyone, but the majority. And then I've seen quite a big divide. So I've seen a lot of people lose hope, lose optimism, lose all of that, and actually really get to a place of being stuck and isolated and depressed, in other words. Just not, there's nothing to hold on to, there's nothing to hope for. And then I've seen others in situations that also, like all of us, have not had any business since March, haven't been able to do anything, but they've sat and asked themselves the question, okay, but what do I love and what do I actually want to do? And they've started to dream. And in that dreaming, they've actually started trying. You know, there's so many times we will speak to people that will be like, oh, I wish I did this, or, oh, you know, in another life I would want to do this. And I'm like, you're still living. So now they're actually almost forced to apply what they are dreaming or thinking about to see if it will work. So I've seen a lot of people start opening up their own businesses or start moving into a completely different industry and tap into the things that they love, whether it's baking or making clothes, or just being productive and creative. So that's been really amazing. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Wonderful. That's great. Yeah. Danica, you sitting look like you're thinking about this one, like you don't want to answer the question. So I want to ask you.
I'm really struggling here. Your gears are turning in my head. It's actually very interesting because I live in a very privileged part of the world, where, you know, the lockdown, like we were still allowed to go outside, go for walks and stuff, you know, and we have this beautiful thing called the seawall, which is in Vancouver. There's basically this wall that surrounds the whole, like that you can walk on, that separates the ocean from the city. And it's just beautiful. And you were allowed to walk on that the whole time. Like there was no problem. And all the numbers of COVID are down and everything. So there was never as intense of a lockdown as you guys had in South Africa. So I think on the hope level, people never really got despondent to the same extent, I think. But there was a lot of there was a heaviness everywhere. But for a lot of the people that I know, they never really encountered hardship. So the optimism was always there because they were just kind of sitting at home. Their mom was now making them food and everyone was having a long vacation, you know. So it's a very, very different kind of situation here. And but a lot of the people in my industry are extremely tired. So there's kind of the losing of hope in that you've been working for so long, and like we work with a lot of you know, first aiders, first responders and stuff like that. So people are they get tired. And so on that level, yes, the hope is kind of draining, the optimism is fading, but business is picking up even more now. So, you know, there's all of these things. To the question, hope and optimism, they're fluctuating and they're up and down, and yeah, I don't even know. There's a lot of stuff going on. Yeah.
Did everyone lose Brett? Yeah.
Yes, I think we lost him.
It's not the South African internet. Yes. Because that is such a real thing. No word. Okay, Brett's back.
Yes.
My Wi-Fi went down. I don't know what happened.
It's
We're
still
supposed
recording.
to have 1 gigabyte free, you know, or not free, but 1 gigabyte of internet. But yeah, it's still recording. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's still recording. So if you guys kept talking, it would have kept recording. It was a profound point. I'll go back and listen.
It really wasn't.
It was.
It was good.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Gabs, how about you on that point? Or do you want to summarize Danica's point before we go to yours?
Yeah, so I think mine is actually pretty similar to hers as well. So my industry is quite privileged. So although I haven't seen a lot of effects on my immediate circle, the things that I have seen, like Danica mentioned, is that a lot of people are feeling tired. And that's what's causing like the breath to go out of them almost. That's the picture that I see. So yeah, I've seen tiredness. I mean, I don't know if this ties in with hope, but I've seen fear and frustration. And that's bringing people to their end. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I've been seeing. But also on a positive note, with the people who have like businesses quietened down, or some of them who have lost their jobs, I've seen the miraculous starting to happen. Mm-hmm. Where, like, for instance, a friend of ours, she sells to the travel industry. She sells like scarves and hats or whatever. Kirsty, you know her. And suddenly God just came through for her in sales. He came through for her in like a travel fund that would cover her business. So I've seen, as believers who have cried out, I've seen the Lord being faithful in that, and that has resparked their trust and their hope. So I would say I'm similar to what Danica said, that a majority of my circle has been more of privilege, but those who have struggled, there's been an incredible seeing God move. Yeah.
Wow. I would love to actually add on to Gab's, just as like a testimony, just because, like, I mean, in this time, you really just, you see the faithfulness of the Lord in such like obvious ways that like no one can miss it, which I love. So like, I mean, even with us, so our company, I mean, we serve the Lord, and every morning we've been praying and worshiping and just declaring his goodness over the business, over our, like, the directors, the CEOs, everyone. And right now we are the only supplier that has every single employee still employed, which is amazing. Wow. And like, we've been told that we are safe for this year. And like, even just the generosity, like all the, like the bosses, you can use all the names for that, but all of them were like, we will cut down our salaries to look after our people, and like, what else can we do? And I'm just sitting there going, wow, there's suppliers that are next to us that have been around for 20 years and have closed their door, so just the faithfulness of God coming through, like, for his people is just beautiful.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So one of the things we've been doing is a restart class. How do you get yourself up and going? And I've been sharing some principles of that on the other podcast. And it's wonderful to see the miraculous as people encourage each other. So it's good to have you guys together, spurring each other on, encouraging others. And I think that we live with this paradox, this, as Kirsty said, to dream, your excuses to not dream. You're not watching football, you're not watching sports, you're not distracted with this, you're not even going into church, many people. There's not all of those things you have to be at. So the excuses to press pause on what you could be doing are gone. And at the same time, there's this other part, which is, how do I live next week? How do I live tomorrow? Yeah. And I was just actually reading in Romans 15, it was quite interesting, about where Paul talks about, just do the best for other people. Be kind to other people. Figure out how you can serve people. It's not very complicated stuff. Jesus came for everybody, not just the Jews, but for every person on the planet. What can you do to love them? What can you do to care for them? What can you do to make their lives better today practically? How can you be, a good neighbor to your neighbor? And so we can think about lofty things, purpose out there. We can think about passion. But the opportunity to serve in a time like this, as people are reflecting on the value of family, the value of relationships, things that are really important, a huge opportunity. And I'm praying that my millennial friends, my new gen friends, will actually carry hope in this season and into the next season, and that it'll spill over, because the world does need impacting positively. It does need changing. People need encouragement. They need the love and the support of people around them. And I think that the philosophies, the systems, the belief in government, belief in healthcare, belief in education, jobs, marketplaces, and so on, a lot of that stuff is going to erode. And there's going to be a need for people who are fully grounded, properly grounded, who have God as their only source of hope, because the other stuff is just not reliable. So it's a delight to know the three of you, and to see you both tackling today, and also keeping one eye on the future. And for each of you, highly talented, lots of options, lots of capability, lots of possibility, and living today practically. It's not an either or. So well done, and appreciate so much the chance to chat with you, to hear your wisdom and wish you were all close by so we could give you a non-virtual hug. And that's right, yeah. And so love to you guys. Any final words from each of you? I'd love to hear just a kind of final thoughts from you guys. Gabby, go for it.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited. Well, I just want to say thank you, Brett, because your podcasts have honestly been such a place of wisdom and hope during this time. Like each time that little notification comes on, I found that your podcasts have been so relevant and have spoken so much life. So I just want to say thank you for being so proactive, because it's having such an effect. So thank you for staying busy and for dreaming and for putting things to task. So I just really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And also that scripture was fire.
Do you think it was worthwhile having 5 shirts on my sofa that I changed in between every few podcast episodes? So you know, they all got recorded in 2 days.
Definitely worth it.
Yes. Yeah.
Kirsty,
So thank you.
say so. Next, we'll give you the last word, Kirsty. Go, Danica.
I'm seconding Gabby here. Like, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity just to kind of bounce ideas off each other. And I learned so much from you guys. And, you know, I've even got a hope injection, you know, just to keep going and to keep serving and, you know, like to impact who I work with positively and to not get bored and, you know, keep trying to find new things to do. And I'm just so grateful that I had this, because I now know that when I go back to work on Monday, that there will be more hope and I'll be able to go further and do more just because of this. So thank you so much. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, Danica. Danica, not the racing driver, the other Danica. Yeah, Kirsty.
Cool. Yeah, I think I just want to say, like, to anyone who's watching this, that, like, you know, you do have purpose, even like in any position that you're in, even while you're like fighting and desiring for more or for something different. So like use it fully, you know, so that you can look back and be like, wow, that was so good. Because there really is gems in every season. And then, just bouncing off both of the beautiful ladies, like, Brett, you are really significant in all of our lives, and everything that you put out there so freely for people to just take, you know, and learn and grow. Like, it's absolutely incredible. So thank you for like the sacrifice of your time so that you bless literally nations. And we're excited like for more of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. Thank you, Gabriella. Thank you, Danica. You guys are awesome. And we'll have to pick up on another conversation later. That was great. Maybe when we do our Lemon for Singles session or one of those.
Oh, help us, Lord. Yes.
I should actually give you guys all a free participation in Lemon for Lovers that's coming up, just because it'll be done by the time this is over, but just in acknowledgement of your wonderful contribution. So hold me to that.
You mean because we need help, Brett? Let's be honest. We need
help. No. What we have here is 3, what they call in the old-fashioned world, 3 unclaimed promises is what it is.
Wow.
Isn't it?
I like that.
Promises but the promises of God and then the unclaimed promises. You guys are definitely unclaimed promises. That's all. Just people just have to, you know, I was reading a scripture this morning and God kind of challenged me, like, are you going to claim that? You know, and it had, are you going to claim that or not? So
man, so are you claiming it? Claim
it. Yeah. Well, the good news is I think we have about 130 Reap weddings so far, so there'll be more to come. So fantastic. Okay, guys, blessings to you. Thank you so much, and greatly appreciate you being on, and look forward to having you again.